this particular rebirth, if you compare with the contemporary and the ancient across culture, this is not a strange thing. This is a common thing, I would say. So let's talk about it. For example,
Ah,
so for example, the enlightenment idea of this Hindu tradition or Vedantic tradition, enlightenment.
yeah,
You understand the world in a different way, and the moment you understand, that becomes your new identity. So
mm,
that's the rebirth.
mm,
So the Lazzarelli is prescribing the same thing. The
mm.
understanding the world makes you a new person, and you recognize your old self was not the same person that you are today.
Yeah,
So that's the spiritual rebirth. And now, if you yourself made a rebirth, now you're talking with a second person like Pontano and Frederick, and you are helping them to recognize that you recognize, so that they can born again. So that's the he's making a soul out of the Frederick and Pontano. So he
yeah,
is making new soul because he have the power now, because
yeah,
he already had that experience before.
yeah.
So now if you talk about Sufi tradition in Islam, it's
Mhm,
all about union with God. Their
mm,
main goal is the union with God. It's not an exotic idea.
yeah,
And even in Jesus Christ, I would say that after John the Baptist baptized him, after that his ministry started. So he born again with the Holy Spirit.
mhm,
So
mhm.
whatever his identity was before, he assumed a new identity and started his ministry.
Yeah,
So here, John the Baptist serves as a purpose of Hermes, and he made a new Hermes, the perfect Hermes, the Christ himself. So this tradition is not exotic, and I'll tell you a legend, like Islamic legend. In Islam, I think it borrows from Jewish tradition also, that God first made a statue of Adam with a clay, and that was lifeless for a long time.
mm,
Then he discussed whether to make this statue alive or not with angels. And
mm,
angel says, no, if you create man, they will create destruction. They will not listen to you. They will not worship you. This is a
mm,
waste of time. You already created us. We are praising you. Why you bother to create a human? Then God says, I know something that you don't know.
mm.
And he animated the body of Adam by pushing the breath of life through the nostril. So what
Mhm.
he did, he just animated a statue.
Yeah,
God himself did it at the very beginning.
mm.
So this is not something exotic.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic the way you describe this. This is wonderful. This is really, really, really good. Yeah, I love
So,
that.
so,
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so Lazar Ali is not like going out of tradition. He's just clarifying the confusion of people had about this idea of how to make a new soul.
yeah,
You understand yourself first, and you help other people to understand. By making them understand, you create a new soul,
yeah,
and that soul is the divine soul because that's the image of God
yeah,
that you've
yeah, yeah,
forgotten.
yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
This
So,
is
and
very
I think you're
powerful
right.
literature.
No, I think you're totally right. I mean, yeah, rebirth is a much more central topic than people realize. Of course, you have people in America talking about the born again Christians and so on, but rebirth is such a fundamental idea. As you say, in Jewish and Christian, in Islamic traditions, and also in the Hermetica, absolutely, absolutely. And maybe if you allow me to say something also about how it appears in the original Hermetic literature. Is that okay if I say something about it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have plenty of time. It's all yours.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, because I wrote this book about Hermetic spirituality a couple of years ago, and so well, I discovered how central the idea of rebirth is there. But in the Hermetica, it does not mean exactly what Lazzarelli means. It is different, but it's both about rebirth. So here, in Hermetica, it's a different story, especially in Corpus Hermeticum 13, but in other parts as well. So the basic story is this. When we usually get born in our first birth, it means that the soul comes from the heavenly spheres. It travels through the several levels of the heavens, through the planetary spheres. It goes down from one planet to another, Saturn, etc. As it goes down, it acquires subtle material bodies and so on. And finally, the soul ends up in the womb, and it stays there for 9 months, and then it gets born as a human body, as a human being. Okay, this is well known. That's the first birth. That is what birth means. However, and that's fascinating, what Hermetica say is that the moment that this happens, the soul enters the womb. And no, not the moment this happens, the moment the soul comes out of the womb. So the moment that you get born. At that very moment, it means that a double entity enters the world. A double entity because human beings consist of partly of a divine soul and partly of a material body. So that's the double entity of the human being. That gets born. The moment this happens, the daimonic entities, the kind of astral energies that are connected to the heavenly bodies, pay attention to the appearance of this newborn child in the world, because it didn't appear yet, and now it appears. And I use a kind of an analogy, just imagine, think of this like a radar screen, like so the astral powers, the daimones, the daimonic entities that resides over the heavenly spheres, they are watching Earth. They see all these blips on the radar that are moving around. That's us, human beings, are moving around in this radar under this. We are following in the radar, and then suddenly a newborn child appears. So there's a new blip on the radar. So it appears. Suddenly it's there. At that very moment, the daimonic entities come down and they invade the body of the newborn child. So they take possession of us. And this happens to all of us. It happens to you, it happens to me, to everybody. So we get possessed, literally, by daimonic entities that starts residing in our soul and in our body, and they stay here. And according to the Hermetica, this is why we have a complex emotional personality. So some people are easily angered, probably because they have a strong diamond from the planet Mars, which is all about anger and violence and so on. Other people are very soft and friendly and full of love, and there's maybe a lot of Venus in their entity, and so on and so forth. And you have all these mixtures. So our personality does not actually come from our soul. Our personality comes from the astral entities that are in our soul and our body. And
This
yeah.
is the mixing bowl that has both reason, daimonic entity, and surprisingly, the mind also.
Well, that's an interesting suggestion. I haven't thought of that idea, that the crater could be interpreted in this way. That's possible.
Is the mixing bowl. And I think in Hermetica 4, there is a separate section, and that section is fascinating because when I read your book, the Lazarelli gave the title of the work crater. Then I realized why he's naming this as a crater. It's a mixing bowl. So mixing bowl literature. So that's a very short section.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And that one says that when human being comes in the lower world, it has a mixture of a lot of different things. And if you don't pay attention, you'll miss the mind part. The mind part comes from Poimander himself.
Yeah.
And the other part comes from the daimonic and the passion and sensation and our own desires.
Yeah,
But
and these daimonic entities come from the cosmos. So
yes,
they're cosmic. They come from our material world.
yes.
And yes, and it's true. In the Corpus Hermeticum 4, it says that God sent down this mixing bowl into the world, a mixing bowl full of nous. And the
Yes.
Greek word nous is being used, which is basically the divine light. And so he sent that down, and I'm going to follow up on your suggestion whether the mixing bowl could be seen as standing for our combined human entity. It's a very interesting suggestion.
Because
But
because 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 Lazzarelli discussed this mixing bowl idea in
yeah,
context of Pandora's jar
yeah,
in the crater. So in the Pandora jar, he was saying that Hermes, uh, as a punishment, because Zeus commanded there has to be a punishment for the man,
yeah,
and Hermes created this Pandora's jar that is full of all passion, sensation, taste, emotion, happiness, but there is a expectancy. That is the monadal part that remains at the bottom. It
yeah,
never leaves, but the problem is because all the passion, sensation roams around outside, they don't recognize the image of God that hangs on the neck of the jar. So,
mm,
so the human body itself, even though it has the monad or light or the Poimander's mind or divine mind or light,
yeah,
because we also has this daimonic cosmic part. For example, each planet gives some attributes to the nature of the things.
yeah,
That each person we meet gives an identity by reflecting their idea on us. So we
yeah,
become a new person at birth, not knowing our monadal part. And
yeah,
now we're lost with the passion and fail to recognize. But the bottom line is, when I read your work and the mixing ball, I realized, oh, mixing ball is the human body. We
yeah.
are bombarded with everything, missing the point. And Lazzarelli was suggesting that if you recognize the light within, that is your salvation for rebirth. There's no
Yeah.
other way around.
It's a very powerful interpretation, and I think this, yeah, you could very well be right that this is actually what it means in the Hermetica itself, and then what Lazzarelli does with it, are two different things. But it's a very interesting way of looking at it. It certainly makes sense.